we have always been proud of our scrutiny role of being dominated by facts and evidence, not necessarily much political partisan. And I think we will not deviate, or you would not expect me that we would deviate from that position that's taken in the past. So, people are on notice that have already been contacted, and we will advise others that we will resume our investigation once the IOPC has completed theirs. Colleagues, is there anything that people wish to add? Feel that I've left out? Or can we proceed to agree with the recommendations that I've outlined to you?
Agree with the recommendation.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to go back then to the main items under consideration. Item 6, Chief Finance Officer Recruitment Selection Process. Officers have done the report. Are there any questions? I'm then going to say the committee is asked to approve the process being followed to recruit the new Chief Finance Officer and note the progress to date, and establish in accordance with the statutory officer protocols an advisory panel with membership set out in paragraphs 4.2, 4.4, 4.6 in the report, page 38, to undertake jointly with the Mayor's representatives, shortlisting interviews with the Chief Finance Officer role and make recommendations to the Mayor and Assembly regarding the appointment of the role. Is that agreed?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm now moving on to item 7, the new draft policy on domestic and gender-based violence and abuse. You've had the report. Do you wish to ask questions to the officers? So, Sian Berry and then Joanne McCartney.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we note and welcome this policy. It's extremely progressive of us to be stepping ahead. We're offering 10 days leave for people who are suffering from domestic violence to go and sort themselves out, and I think that's a really good thing. If the officer would like to say a few words about whether other workplaces are going to be following suit through our influence, that would be really useful to know.
Joanne McCartney.
Yeah, I again welcome this. I think it's a real step forward. My question is, how are you ensuring that managers and staff are aware of the policy and to have the necessary training to have the appropriate conversations that will be needed?
Thank you, Chair.
Can I add more?
I mean, the key thing here is about gatekeeping, and we have to understand that managers, let me be positive, with the best will in the world, might want to start gatekeeping, might want to not interpret the policy as it should be. So I want assurance that in that scheme that used to be that individuals who are taking this understand that they have any concerns regarding their supervisors and managers, they can go somewhere else. And I don't get that in the policy.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. So, yes, we're really pleased to be leading the way when we're working with and taking on board sort of feedback from other employers that are set out in paragraph 3.6. I think the question that Assembly Member Berry asked was, how do we make sure that others are going to follow suit? Well, this plays very strongly into the Mayor's Good Work Standard. It's clearly a part of being a really good employer, and we are making sure we're promoting the Good Work Standard on behalf of the Mayor and on the GLA Group. So we have shared this policy through our Leading by Example working committee with all the other GLA Group organisations. I presented to the CIPD this week for London employers on the Good Work Standard, and we will ensure that we keep those links underway. We are still in the consultation period, so that probably plays to the other couple of questions. So that doesn't end until the 25th of October. So we're keen to hear from staff, particularly on the points around how we can ensure confidentiality and how we ensure that line managers take this action. Training for staff. clearly HR and our professionals within HR will be at the heart of the policy, but so will line managers. And we will need to make sure that once the policy is in place, that we have clear messages to our assistant directors that they can cascade. To the question from Assembly Member Arnold about gatekeeping of confidentiality, we'll make sure, and maybe strengthened through the policy with your feedback, that members of staff can not just go to their manager, but actually can seek support from across the organisation or their manager's manager. We have executive director champions for particular aspects of diversity and inclusion. We haven't ruled that out for this, and potentially if we were to go down that road, we would also have a sort of senior leader who can ensure that the policy is being implemented fairly and would keep it under review. What's mentioned in the policy also is the fact that we have signed up to an employers group called the Employers Initiative on Domestic Abuse. So we have signed up to their updates, and that will allow us to keep ahead of any of the progress or the other developments employers are making.
Okay.
My question was not so much about messages being cascaded. It was about ensuring that managers, and I suppose it's a broader point than just domestic violence, but have training to ensure they have those appropriate conversations. I think it's a bit like a sort of mental health first aid training, but somebody has done very well. It's about the language you use.
And there's, we can definitely consider how we do that. I think we need to think carefully about which development programs we place that in. We have a corporate induction program for all new staff. I think that would be a good starting place. There are also some mandatory training sessions on the policies that we want all managers to be aware of. Again, we can put it into there. And we've signed off recently a small amount of money to raise awareness of mental health first aid. We haven't quite got to the full first aid training because that's quite an investment. But again, that would dovetail quite neatly into that, into the workshops we're going to run.
It seems to me there's quite a crossover. And that language to be used, and sensitivities and so forth. And if something could be looked at.
And I also think there's a point to be made about also supporting line managers. Some line managers may not be well equipped, or may want to be able to engage in that conversation. So supporting their well-being as well as the individuals is equally important.
Jeanette Arnold.
No, Chair, the focus is on the person who is being abused and subject to this, and the line managers and all that. I just want assurance. I am experiencing domestic violence. I am not going to go to my manager in my work unit and say this, because I want to carry on working and I want to keep my life my own. I want to hear from you that I can go to HR and then that can be kept confidential to the team that I'm in. Because if that isn't cast iron, then people are not going to expose themselves because they have got to re-enter that team to work with, and they don't want. And, you know, with the best will in the world, I have never worked in a more porous organisation than the GLA. There is absolutely not a bloody secret in this building. It's shocking and disgraceful. So this is what concerns me, really does. And I think you've got to actually look and actually make that clear. The people who we're looking to support are victims, are people really in need of this access to this. But they should not have to go, if they don't want to anybody in their team or associated with their work area. And that should be the issue about confidentiality. Because I have no confidence whatsoever that confidence will be maintained in teams. I'm sorry to say this.
I can assure you that HR will be available and trained to be able to talk to individuals if they don't feel confident going to their line manager. It's probably also worth remembering that we have our completely confidential employee assistance programme line that's open 24/7. individuals don't necessarily have to give their name to seek advice at that point. We don't get reports, or any reports we get are only about the numbers of calls. There's no name. So there are two routes there over and above the line manager. But clearly, there are going to be staff who do feel confident with their line manager and would want to have that conversation.
Okay, can you take on board the comments that members have said? Thank you for your answers. Can we go back in terms, can we note the report? I think it's an important report for this organisation, and thank you for the work that's been done in putting it together. Item 9, update recruitment campaign on housing and land Royal Docks. We've got a... Sorry, smart working. Why did I want to miss that? Of all issues. We've had this report in front of us. Are there any questions to officers? Sorry, Navin Shah.
Thank you, Chair. I have in front of me a response from Unison to the consultation and the policy itself. They are very critical and concerned about the policy as it's currently written and the impact, as they say, on GLA's ability and its employer to serve Londoners. They particularly they make a reference about impacts on health, safety and well-being and the impact on particular groups, including those in the Equalities Act 2010. They also find general lack of evidence and details behind how proposals were arrived at, and perception from members that communication and information provision has been inadequate. So that is from their response. Basically, in terms of comments and questions I have, that I don't believe that Unison have had response to their concerns and any new plans or any amendments put to them for further consultation. So the question is, having had the response, is there going to be any further consultation with the staff and the union concerned? Also, they've raised the issue whether to clarify that this scheme is entirely voluntary, because they do not think that there are incentives for the staff or encouragement in a positive way without pressurizing them indirectly or their ability to be acting collaboratively.
Okay, Navin, I did make some representations to Mary very quickly. I think you can answer those points, because I made them on behalf of a section of Unison Disability that hadn't had feedback. So what's the answers to Navin's question? I think we got the gist of it. You've got a meeting, haven't you?
So I am meeting our staff disability network. My understanding is that most of the outstanding concerns come from that section of our staffing community. I think we've done quite a lot of work already to try and reassure them, but I'm going personally to their meeting on Monday week. What we have already committed to is to doing a full sort of equalities impact assessment of the changes that we propose to make.
Well, that's something, again, they've raised, saying,
we're going to do that.
Has that equality impact assessment been done? If so, they want a clear evidence and sight of that.
Yes, so it hasn't been done yet, Assembly Member Shah, but we have promised that it will be done. So that's the first piece of it. I think on the so I'm very, very aware of continuing concerns from that group. So commitment to do the equalities impact assessment, and also a commitment to review this policy, on an ongoing basis. On the whether this will be voluntary, again, we've had lots of conversation with Unison about this, and I think we've been clear that yes, it is voluntary. However, one of the reasons we're entering into this, we're doing it for a number of reasons. I think recruitment and retention being an important point, but also so that we can continue to live within the space that we have got. So provided that enough people work flexibly, and this building, Union Street, and the Royal Docks building can work for us, it will remain voluntary. And I think everyone seems to me quite comfortable that is the position that we're going in. I mean, I've spoken to Unison membership myself about this.
I mean, we also need to, with the certainly perception that that there may be the scheme being imposed rather than, given incentives for staff to sort of accept the sort of policy changes and what it actually means in terms of advantages of this particular policy.
Yes, well, you're right. We're not making explicit incentives to people. We're not paying for heating at home and things like that. That's been, we've had that discussion. I do think that a number of people, from the consultation, we think this is a very positive move. Some don't. I accept that. I am hopeful, however, that on balance, with the flexible working policy adopted, with the technology issued and working, and with people getting used to some of the new flexibilities that they're being offered, I think probably on balance it will work for those that don't want to work flexibly as well as those that do want to. But the proof will be in it. We'll need to review it.
Well, I was hoping we could move on.
Chair, yes, we can move on. I'd like to see, because in the report, in terms of next steps, way forward, there's no reference that this particular consultation is still being it's still running, and that when it's concluded that you will let us know what the outcome is. And
I'm very happy, Chair, to write to the committee after my meeting.
A number of other members have now indicated.
I just wanted to clarify, Royal Docks building, who's based there? I don't know, we had a building at Royal Docks.
It's the Crystal building at the Royal
Crystal
Docks,
building.
where
So
Dan's team
So Dan is in there by himself?
Well, with his team.
Oh, his team. Okay, thank you.
Jeanette Arnold, did you?
No.
Oh, fine. Thank you. Okay. So can we take on board the comments made by Navin Shah? The committee's asked to note the report. Can we agree with that? Okay. Item 9. The committee's asked to note the overview of the recruitment campaign by Housing, Land and Royal Docks, which was led by Transport for London TfL Resourcing. Are there any questions to officers?
A simple comment. I note that you refer to our GLA application form as being very large. People have commented to me how exceedingly bureaucratic it is. You infer in this report that you've used a more streamlined process on this. Does that mean that the streamlined process is going to be introduced to replace the large bureaucratic form?
Thank you, Assembly Member. Yes, we have already conducted a number of trials. This was one of 4 of using a different type of application process. Certainly from candidates from the private sector, they're looking for a more streamlined approach, which might be, for example, a CV-style approach. So we conducted 3 pilots over the summer, looking at different ways that we could ask for candidate information, which still has to be very rigorous because we're making decisions on it. And together with the evidence gathered from this particular piece of work, we'll be looking to change that recruitment process.
Chairman.
Okay, so can we note that? Thank you. Moving on to item 10. Correspondence received in relation to Summons Garden Bridge project. Following on the publication yesterday, the report Up the Garden Path. The committee is asked to note the documents received in response to this committee's summons relating to the Garden Bridge. These documents are attached in appendices 1 to 13 in the report and have been circulated to members under separate cover of a memo. Do we need to know anything else? Thank you very much. Item 11, Assembly Budget Requirements. The committee is asked to agree the London Assembly draft requirement for 2020/21 for the recommendation to the Mayor, subject to any changes that might be necessary prior to the final agreement on the budget in February 2020 to reflect any further advice from the Executive Director of Resources on contingencies, financial reserves, and 2, any changes that emerge during the remainder of the budget process. B, we need to approve the general use of the Assembly budget as allocated to the relevant teams within the Secretariat by the committee in March each year and set out in the report. Can we agree that? Thank you very much. Item 12, work programme. The committee is asked to note the work programme for 2019-20 Assembly year as set out in the report, identify any issues which we do outside this meeting and consider for future meetings. Okay, agreed. Item 13, London Assembly Work Programme 2019 January 2020. I'm aware of the minor updates in the published work programme as follows. The Environment Committee November meeting title has changed from Safeguarding London from Flooding to The Impact of Climate Change and Extreme Weather. Secondly, the Environment Committee January meeting title has changed from The Impact of Climate Change and Extreme Weather to Waste and Recycling. And finally, there is no plenary Assembly meeting in December, and that of January will look at the January plenary meeting will look at the draft GLA budget. The committee is asked to approve the draft work programme for London Assembly committees and panels in November 2019 and January 2020 and ratify the topic and scope for additional projects added to the work programme in May and September 2019. Are you content? Yeah. Okay, moving on. Item 14, draft committee timetables 2020/21. Can I ask the committee to approve in principle the draft timetables of the London Assembly and the committee meetings for 2020/21 year, noting that the final programme of the meeting is subject to related decisions by London Assembly and to be taken at the annual meeting in May 2020. I'm aware there is a correspondence going on around the timing of plenary meetings in relation to half-term. So can I ask members to allow me to explore those correspondence issues that have been raised with the Secretariat, and if need be, we need to produce some revised material or bring back a further report to see that, because there are some issues of overlapping things.
I had a separate point. I don't know if any member wanted to raise anything on the plenary point. I just wanted to say that the issue of the deadlines associated with the MQT scheduled for May, just after the election 2020, that we're investigating those as well. I hope that we can work those out, but it may be, if not, that we'll come back to the committee with revised proposals.
And you're saying investigating those, that means we have to communicate with the Mayor's office, because it's the changing of deadlines of when certain information goes in.
So it's not a statutory deadline that we're talking about, it's one that is, there's a written agreement in MQT procedures between the Assembly and the Mayor.
So we can agree with what I've read out, doesn't compromise that.
I just wanted to say, you can agree that now because it's in principle agreement, but there is this issue. If I need to come back to the committee, I will.
I didn't want members to be left out of loop with that if they think they've raised it.
I'm confused about half-term holidays. What do you mean?
I think it was about switching deadlines around different things, and we would have ended up with meetings taking place in half-term, which we generally try to avoid as well. Caroline Pidgeon.
I'd flag this issue of May as the deadline for MQT being too immediate. There's also an issue around conference season in September, because I understand my party's is later due to something to do with Labour's, so I think we just need to get those dates right. And are we able to plan in the dates of people's question time and have those set out as well? I know that's ambitious.
Just if officers could pick that up and see if we can get it into people's diaries.
That would be helpful as well, I think.
Okay, item 14, can we leave that then and explore what we need to explore, but the rest of it we're doing it in principle just to protect in terms of diary. Okay, moving on. Item 15, date of the next meeting. Our next meeting is Thursday the 21st of November 2019 at 10 a.m. in the Chamber in City Hall. And we've dealt with any other business that I've item 16 considered urgent. I think I can now declare this meeting closed. Thank you.
GLA Committee Room